Russian germanium transistor substitution for American and Japanese old radios, like the Zenith Transoceanics and that. Now there's a lot of them here, and I'm going to try and simplify this down. These are all MPs, and these are 1T403V and 1T403D. And then these little kind of interesting packaged ones here are GT905s. Now, the yellow ones, those are the silicon Russian transistors, and I have some NPN and then some complementary PNP. These are KT361, and I forget, those are KT316 or something like that. Anyway, when looking at these, well, let me go over. These here are all GTs. GT309, GT309, GT115, 1T308. The way I separated these was by the bias voltage. You might think they're all the same. Well, they're not. These here are the MPs, and the 1Ts tend to be about 0.12 to 0.15, and these tend to be 0.225 to 0.26 or something like that, whereas the silicons are a half a volt, 0.5 to 0.57, something like that. And these all tend to work better. They're lower frequency. They tend to work better for audio stages and AM, IF, and stuff like that, where they use a lower bias voltage. These are all higher frequency over here, and they tend to work better for like FMR, FAMP, FMIF, and I've already done some testing here. Now, when you're substituting, of course, it's always imperative that you look at a few things besides the bias, because we'll show some of that. But you need to look at the frequency, you need to look at the voltage. Of course, you don't want to put a 6-volt transistor in a 12-volt radio. You don't want to put a transistor that has a maximum of, say, you know, a half a megahertz in an FMR FAMP or anything like that. You need a higher frequency transistor. Of course, in the audio stages, it really is not critical. You can use just about anything in there as long as the biasing is right and the current handling capacity is right. You don't want to put a transistor that's good for 10 milliamps as an audio output. That's not going to work out real well. So you need to look at voltage, you need to look at frequency, and of course, you don't have to get real deep into gain. We're talking about transistor radios here. You know, it's nice to match the transistors. You can do that on most meters. A lot of the cheaper meters have tells you the HFE of the transistor. And if you're doing a push-pull audio stage, you can just go through, for instance, and just start plugging them in and get two that are about the same. If I have my meter, I can show that. That's not a big deal. The other thing, of course, is, and this is probably going to be the biggest challenge for most people when substituting transistors, is to actually get the leads in the right holes. So, of course, you have base collector and emitter, and you could find most of the layouts for these in online. And for instance, this is the GT403 right here. So this is the GT403 or 1T403. When you look at the transistor, the Russian G looks like a little R, so it looks like it says on the transistor RT403. And of course you have base, emitter, and collector, and then the dimensions. And the Russians use a bit of a different numbering system than I think we're used to. They use a lot of the same prefixes, and then the last letter will be different. And the last letter affects the whole thing, but it largely affects the gain. So you can see 1T403V. I don't know if I printed that out, but could just take this one. You can see it's an amp 1 point. They're all the 1T403 series. They're all 1.25 amps. Collector current. They're all 30. Well, the voltages vary a little bit. And you can see here that H21E is HFE. That's the gain. You can see that moves around quite a bit. And when they say 50 to 150, the transistors do vary that much. When you start testing them, they are all over the place. That's why in a push-pull situation, it is kind of imperative to match a couple of them up. And these are good for 0.008 megahertz. So of course you're not going to use this for an FMRF amp or an FMIF amp. It's not going to work. This is more of a power transistor. And I'm not going to go through all of these. I have tested a bunch of them out in the backcountry here where the signals are really low. And this is a GT313, and I believe there's a GT320 that's about the same. And let me see if I can show you what those look like. That's those right there. And these work really good for FMRF amps and the FM stage, the whole FM stage, IF, whatever. If I had to pick a generic transistor, this would be it. Look at the frequency on these things, 450 to 1 gigahertz. So these things are more than suitable for just about everything in the front end. And they have 4 wires coming out of them. One of them is the that one there is the shield, the case, and then base, collector, and the emitter. So you take a look at what one looks like here for real as it flies off onto the ground. So this is a GT313 or 320, and you can buy these on eBay. You have to buy them in large lots, as you can see, but they're not that expensive. They usually, they're like, usually the shipping's like $8, and the transistors are 25 for $10 or something like that. But if you go and you buy NTE, you're going to pay $8 a piece for these things. The MSRP on the NTE transistors is super high now. And these things make a huge difference when it comes to the performance. You can change these, and I've noticed a big difference when I'm out here in the backcountry where the signal levels are low, how the radio performs with the sensitivity and all of that. So keep in mind too, every time you change these transistors, they have a capacitance. And the capacitance, usually the lower the capacitance, the higher the frequency the transistor will do. And you can see these are 2.5 picofarads. Well, you have to realign the set every time you change the transistors. You should realign the set. You know, if we take a look at another one, let me see what I got. Like here's a GT308. Look at this one, 22 picofarads. And see, this one's only good for 100 megahertz. So again, getting the base collector and emitter configuration straightened out, and you know, is going to be a big challenge for a lot of people who are not used to working on this stuff all the time. And if you get these leads reversed, it's not going to work. So you need to do a lot of research and make sure you get them in there the right way. And you can experiment with you know, switching the stuff around. I've never fried one by getting it in the wrong way. Here's an interesting package. So let's do a quick demo of these, and we'll try a few of them in a Zenith Transoceanic 3000. Okay, the power source is a solar panel here, which puts out about 18 volts at 100 milliamps. And then I have it connected to a 12 volt Zener diode here to limit the voltage to what the radio wants to see. Let's take a quick peek at the performance. Here we're on FM.
Off to a fairly uneventful start. 78 Henderson, 77 North Las Vegas, 75 Las Vegas. Just ahead, Sean Hannity coming up.
I love the friends I have gathered. I was shot down.
Money train, money and time. Here is this hour's cash code word. Post. You have 15 minutes to call **win from your mobile phone or enter online.
Okay, let's play with this station, whatever, Sean Hannity, whatever. It's a real weak, buried in the mud station. Let's play with the FMRF amp and see what kind of performance we get out of a couple of these.
Or they'll buy it. Call 456.
This is the FMRF amp.
Online to theblankettsteam.com. The News Radio 100.5 KXNT cash code is back. When you hear the
Okay. So you can see here, it's nice to play with a Zenith because they're socketed and we don't have to, you know, we make it easy. And this is a popular radio. So we got a little dot there. The little dot is the what usually is the emitter indicator, but of course this is a 4-pin transistor, meaning one of the 4 pins is tied to the case. So we can see that this pin right here is tied to the case, which would be this right here. Okay. So then what we'll do is we'll assume that if this pin is tied to the case, that this is perhaps the base right here. And of course, if you're testing a bad transistor, you can't use this method. This is very hard to do one-handed. So we see we got 0.18 there. And this is polarity sensitive. And we have 0.28 there. So we're going to assume that this is the base, this is the collector, this is the emitter, and this is the case right here. Now, I probably won't remember that, but I'll try. So if this here is the case, the shield, straight across from it would be the base, and then closest to the dot would be the emitter, and then up here would be the collector. So taking a look at this, can see the one on the bottom or closest to me is the base, then the collectors, and the emitter. Okay, so going up is base, collector, emitter. Now we just have to figure out how to get that in there.
NATO member Turkey has announced that Alliance's joint defense mechanism will be activated if ISIS in fact breaches their border. So you got ISIS clashing and now across Europe. And you got riot police, separating hundreds of Kurds and ISIS supporters in Germany after at least 9 people are killed in protests in Turkey.
So as you can hear, I didn't connect the shield. I just connected base, collector, and emitter. You can hear that transistor works very well.
A lot of news on Ebola today too that we're going to get to in the course of the program. I mean, there's a lot of news out there. Now, let me explain. I want to take some time to really delve a little more deeply into this Washington Post exclusive on what is yet another scandal.
This is very hard to do one-handed and video and
Arrestgate, and that's the specific targeting of conservatives and Tea Party members and 9/11 or 9/12.
you can hear the performance is good with that transistor. We'll try it in the oscillator.
No, absolutely.
Okay, this is the oscillator. So again, we got base, collector, base, collector, so this is base. I think it's like this. Okay, now you can hear we came back on a different station. That's because we're changing the oscillator, and of course the transistor is different. So this is where the alignment would bring it back in. But let's see if we can dial in Hannity.
Story grew out of the prostitution scandal. You may remember back in April of 2012, the day that President Obama arrived in Colombia, and there was news that Secret Service agents had brought prostitutes back to their hotel rooms.
See how far it takes to get it back on.
And came to the conclusion that there was no indication that any member of the White House advance team engaged in any improper conduct or behavior. Now we actually have a tape of Carney saying this. Listen to what Carney...
Okay, so you could see there. This transistor that I'm using is a GT313B. And you can see that this transistor is a good substitute for the front end of the FM on the Zenith Transoceanic. Now, this up here, this is the AM and shortwave front end, and I guess this would be RF, amp, oscillator, and mixer. So I'm not going to go into demonstrating that this transistor will work in there, because I know it will, as well as it will work in the IFs. These are weird packages, and the leads are real close together, and what a pain in the ass to change that. So in general, I would buy the GT313 or 320 for all of this stuff. We could try this to.
According to what the Washington Post exposed today, new
Where's it? Where's the AM broadcast band on this? It should be this.
And tell your plan. And the open bar going on every Monday from 4 to 8 p.m. Now we've also got free admission with Nevada. Use your blue card at the door.
Hey, so let's just try this one. And you could see here the pinout of this thing. It's going to be quite challenging to try and fit that into that. So let me see if I can figure out what is what on here.
lower, dare tell the truth, you're going to bear repercussions for that. And that this was used in this case because it was a lead-up, just like with Benghazi. We have to make up a story about a YouTube video, make up a story about a spontaneous demonstration, because the president, his entire narrative was that Al-Qaeda was dead, Al-Qaeda had been decimated, Bin Laden's dead, and GM is alive. You see what's going on here?
So you can see you're going to have to figure out the leads for yourself on this.
Flanks them as soon as she gets in office. And it's not a flattering word. Quick break. We'll come back. Our top stories. More on the prostitution sex scandal.
You can see that this needs to be aligned if you change the transistors, because it moves the place on the dial so far that the RF amp and the oscillator are now out of whack. Try it in this one here. This is very difficult.
If you're buying for the first time or getting a fresh start, we can connect up to $15,000 through down payment assistance programs. If you're ready for a home of your own, call 866-90... Credit approval required. Restrictions apply. Programs may be subject to separate approval process. Equal housing lender. This is Joe Hardy Jr., candidate for District Court Judge, Department 24.
Okay. GT 313, 320 for the whole front end. Alright, I'm just going to simplify this. You could probably use some of the MPs or the GT 308, 309 in the front end. But just to simplify this so you don't end up doing what I did, buying 5,000 transistors, just go with the GT 320, 313, 320 high frequency Russian military transistors. You can see they work good. Alright, let's do a quick substitute on the output, and these are 1T403P. It's this one here. It looks like the well, doesn't seem to say here what's what, does it? Did they forget something? Oh, here we go. Emitter collector base. Well, that sure is stupid. Why don't you show it over here? So it looks like the collector is the case. Well, I don't know. I have to figure it out using the meter. See how low the drop is here? 0.108. So that's obviously the base. And then if I go over here, 0.107, that's obviously the collector or the emitter. We don't know which one's the collector or the emitter. Alright, this is just one of the little cheapest crap meters that money can buy. And it has an HFE setting on it. So what we need to do is figure out the HFE on this. So we put it on PN. We're going to stick it in the PNP hole. Alright, so we can see that the HFE on this one is 268. And it's moving as the thing heats up in the sun. The gain, that's one thing about germanium transistors. They will get hot and they will thermally run away. They're real sensitive to thermal runaway. Okay, let's plug another one in there. Okay, now you can see the HFE on this one is 403. Like I said, they are all over the place. And it really doesn't make a lot of difference unless they're in a push-pull situation. So what we want to do is we want to find, we're going to change those two. What we want to do is we want to go through and get two that are about the same. It doesn't matter if there's two that are 100 or two that are 400 or two that are 350. We want two that are about the same. And you can see as this one changes temperature, it's changing.
Reach out and grab you. Abracadabra. Abracadabra. You make me hot, you make me sigh.
Very difficult to do this one-handed, but I'm trying. Okay, let's try the driver, which is a common failure on these. In fact, it looks like it's failed on this one already. Yeah, it's got some NTE part in it. So let's jam one of these up in here if I can do it. So you can see that works well in the audio section, as would most all of these P and MPs, because these are the lower, the 0.1 volt or so bias transistors, and then the GTs are over there. GTs and 1Ts are the higher frequency, higher bias voltage, around 0.2. These are around 0.1. So it depends on how the circuit is set up in the radio. If the circuit is a voltage divider configuration, a couple resistors and a voltage divider, and they're only going to apply 0.1, if you put a 0.2 in there, it's going to sound distorted and it's not going to have the proper gain because it's under biased. Over biasing them probably doesn't really hurt. It'd probably be better to over bias them a little bit, especially when you're going with these transistors, these that are really higher, a much higher current than what was in here originally. They can handle it. You're only talking about a 0.5 milliamp or something, so it's not a big deal. So yeah, the next thing I want to do is I have another radio I want to take a look at and see if we could fix. All right, this is the next item, which this is a repair. This does not work. If you press your ear up against the speaker, you can hear barely, you can hear stations barely on both AM and FM, so I don't think it's IF transformers or front end. It's got to be in the audio. And like I mentioned before, the driver transistors like to fail on this, or it could be the final IF. So I've already pulled it apart because it's very hard to get to the transistors on this one, especially the driver that's up way back up in here. So we can, so it's got a schematic here. It's a Royal 2000. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the transistors out of here and check them in here, since it's the same thing, which is, you know, it's cheating, but who cares. All right, so in this one we have first audio and then driver. So we'll, no, I guess that's what we got here too. We got first audio and then the driver is right there. So let's try one of these. You can see these still have the little black thing on the bottom of it. It's going to be a pain. Well, I have to admit that I stand corrected. It's not a transistor. I changed both drivers and I tried all 3 IF amps in here and they all worked exactly the same as the one that came out. So it's, I guess maybe it's an open capacitor. I've never seen an open capacitor in one of these Zeniths yet, but it was the first time for everything. They used really good parts in these, really good quality parts, and I have run across IF transformer problems with the mica and transistors, but that's about it. So I guess we'll have to check the electrolytics. Alright, let's attempt to diagnose this. I'm back home, so it should be a lot easier. We'll give this thing a shot. Why not? And you can barely hear. And I can tune it, and it sounds like there's good sensitivity, so it's just probably in the audio stage. These radios were really nicely made. Just absolutely the best of the best. Start here.
We didn't really know anything. We just, we just made it up as we went along. That's really.
Well, I'm a bit suspicious of this capacitor right here because and then this one goes from ground to
Beatles, George Harrison's You from Apple Gears box set.
I'm suspicious of both of those really cool looking white. Those are really cool, really nice capacitors, but it appears they're open. Okay, let's see what happens here if we go from here to here. Okay, can I do this? Hardly. One-handed. Huh, not much. Not much. Now there's another one down there. Well, here's another one down here that sounds like it's open. It's right there. See that? And this one And then the other side of it connects to right here. See how thin that sounds? There's no bass to it over here.
If I fell in love with you.
You know what? All of these white capacitors are shot. Let's see. I can hear it come up a little bit in the speaker. Okay, well this one here gave me a little bit more volume, then this one here gives me a little bit more.
Great things happen at night, especially here. Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports.
When folks think about what they get from Alaska, they think...
Try that one down there.
This is American as cowboys.
And then this one here gives it all to us. Come on, there's...
Not beans out of a can. Sounds kind of nice, but still.
Years ago, professionals and do-it-yourselfers ever since.
You look at me and go, you think me.
You're my dad.
It's on any top 20 together and said they boom local. It's a lot of friends. What's this 2013?
AM's not going to work anyway because the bar antenna is in here and it's not hooked up. Might get one station, might get KNX.
NFL for wearing the headphones to his post-game press conference. Why? Because last... Cut.
I think it increased the salary.
This is not acceptable. Okay, somebody I know is working on a little portable Zenith radio and they requested one of these Russian germanium transistors. And I think this is what I'm going to send you. We're going to try it right now, but this is a GT309A. It's in a... That's not going to focus on that. It's in a little tiny package that should fit in your pocket radio. And that's the pinout right there. So if you look at the bottom of it, you can see the case is collector, the middle pin is emitter, and the far pin is base. I know it's just turned a little bit. So see how that goes? The case is collector. So you can't let it touch anything. Emitter is the center and base is the... So what we'll do to test it.
800-631-1559. Over 1 million people have enrolled in health insurance through Covered California.
Okay. So you can see this is a 4-pin. And if I remember right... this pin right here is the case. It's tied to the case. This right here is the base. This is either emitter and collector. This is collector or emitter, and that's collector. I don't know the outside ones, but that's the base. So getting that in there is going to be a little bit of work, but I'm going to try and do it so we can verify that it will work.
Usually when Mom brings me to Albertsons, I get to ride in the cart.
but not today. See, Albertsons is having their big stack-up sale.
Over 10,000.
Just pass through,
Namin con equipo.
See, this is the tune slug. The tune slug's like a car radio right here. That's how Zenith tuned these radios.
Una hora.
Expected
Viento. On Watts. Pick up.
To the bay, strolling so casually. We're different and
So there you go. GT309A. Can we'll just leave it right there. That's a pretty weak station. The cat wants to play. The cat wants to watch me play with the radio.
Nation Beats with a fusion of music from US and Brazilian Northeastern music, maracatu. So they blend many different styles from the Northeastern American music. Nation Beats, and the CD is called
Okay, so this needs a complete recap. Which is going to be a bit of a hassle, but at least I know what's wrong with it. So I will pick up the capacitors the next time I'm. These are all for all American 5s. I mean, they work. I didn't even check the polarity putting them in, but yeah, this guy here just needs a recap. So that's it.